I would have told you before the day he got shot. I would have said, there's a Luciferian spirit
That's
pushing a generation of children who have been indoctrinated successfully by public school, media, cartoons, um, politically motivated speech to become completely intolerant to anyone whose ideas conflict with what they are pre-programmed to believe.
The world keeps lying, but he won't retreat on his quest for truth. Yeah. Truth, quest for truth. They can't stop me, they can't block me. Moving through, got that fire, they can't block me. Quest for truth, breaking chains, making waves. That's what I do. When they hate, I create.
Welcome everyone to Pounders Quest. I'm your host, Jon Pounders, and today I have a really awesome broadcast. And I feel like this conversation has been a long time coming because I don't know why, but maybe because I listened to Joe's father for so long before his recent passing. And Joe, I feel like I've known Joe, even though he doesn't know me, and we don't know each other other than we talk on the phone from time to time. But this is a broadcast I've been wanting to do for a long time. And I feel like the timing is just right because of the stuff that we have going on in the world is just so unique and so mind-blowing compared to everything that we've experienced. And a lot of it seems like his dad used to talk about, and it's really wild, especially like the 2025 and this supposed comet or ship that we see coming in. There's just so many wild things that we could talk about. But Joe, welcome to the show, man. I'm glad you made it.
Hey, thanks, John. I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation.
Well, before we get started, tell people what they should know about you.
So, I'm the CEO of Skywatch Television. I'm honored every week to do deep dives into the book of Revelation. We do a lot of Bible theology. I think we get to sit with some of the brightest minds in the world. Derek and Sharon Gilberts, Carl Gallups, Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis. We have, Sean Tabbitt and Jonathan Kahn. And we're blessed every week to be able to have these conversations where we really unpack a lot of what is biblical that the church seems to be overlooking. And so, in that way, Skywatch is kind of evangelizing the evangelists in many ways. A lot of people view our weekly program as their form of digital church. I'm also the CEO of our charitable ministry, a place called Whispering Ponies Ranch, where we offer therapeutic, interventional, very highly trained intervention programs for kids that have been pulled out of, sex trafficking, the foster care system, that have encountered every kind of abuse known to man. And so I'm a child advocate at heart. I'm also a health advocate and do a lot of writing and, DVD architecting and lectures and presentations on health and getting out of what I call Babylon, getting out of the entrapment of pharmakia and in exchange pursuing a life of herbal medicine more as God intended our bodies to heal. So I'm doing a lot of things, and I'm just so grateful for the time to get to talk to you and your audience. And really quickly, before we dive in, John, I want to say that your reputation precedes you. I knew of you before we had the chance to talk on the phone. People were asking, have you seen what Jon Pounders is doing with his podcast? Have you seen what he's doing with his program? This guy's on top of stuff. Check it out. So I was very well aware of your awesome work and your meaningful programming. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I've been watching Skywatch for, I feel like, I don't remember exactly how long. I think around since 2010, probably some form of Skywatch or the people that were associated with your dad. I was, watching, and in a way it shaped a lot of the direction that I've gone in a lot of this because had it not been for me hearing some of these programs where you're talking about some of the stuff like trafficking, had I not heard those programs, I wouldn't have discovered the stuff that I discovered in my own hometown, which brought me to doing a documentary and continued on that work. So it's really neat to be able to have this conversation. And I know that your father, that taking over what he built must be a monumental task because I know that your dad, I mean, if you hear about conspiracies or you hear about Christian prophecy, your dad's probably one of the top names in all of that, I would imagine.
When he really came on the scene was in the early, let's see, well, it was late 90s. when he came out with his first book. And I remember those first interviews with Art Bell, and he was really kind of escaping just the stratosphere of evangelical Christianity and kind of a church-based following. Because my dad was very well known as I was growing up as a member of the presbytery, and he had served in high office spaces inside of, some of the largest Christian organizations in the world. When he started to kind of bust through that stratosphere was in the late 90s. He started doing big time radio, and he was being invited to a lot of places, and a lot of them were almost interviewing him like, from the vantage of being a shock jock. Let's talk to the Looney Tune Bible prophecy guy, and he'll
Right.
be a fun spectacle for our audience, right?
Yeah.
And so they would have him on disbelieving everything that he said, but he's this quacky guy that, and he's good on a microphone. And that opened so many doors for my dad. He was really good on a microphone. So be it entertainment from the vantage point of the interviewer, I look at it like God opening doors into secular audiences. And so he went through a series of years, John, where a lot of his closest friends and allies in ministry thought he was kind of losing his way.
Mhm.
What is he doing talking to these programs that are also right after him, hosting shows on ghost hunters?
Yeah.
What is he doing talking to these secular, goofy radio programs with massive audiences? But my dad viewed himself as an evangelist. So, without recapping his entire career, he was a very interesting man. And I agree with you. You kind of can't look up anything having to do with the Raphaim, the Nephilim, the Titans, the ancient gods, spiritual warfare. You can't look those things up now and not find something to do with Tom Horn. His genome is interwoven in 35 years plus of ministry like that. Of course, numerous time best-selling author and eventually the founder of Skywatch Television. So to get back to the front end of what you had mentioned, yeah, taking over for the legendary Dr. Tom Horn is an impossible errand. I mean, it would be foolish to think that I could step in to his shoes. They're a once in a lifetime experience. And now that he has passed and he's in the arms of Jesus, what is left is God opening up a new way, a different way of doing ministry. And so I tell my team all the time, we're not going to be able to do things the way that Tom Horn did things. And by the way, the world is not the same world that existed when he was here. It has changed so rapidly, John, even just over the last 5 or 6 years. The world does not look like what it did even just a half decade ago. And so, I will leave it up to the Lord to do what he will with my life. I will leave it up to him to appraise my performance and whether we're getting things done. My goal is to do everything exactly and precisely as we feel led to do. And it is a season where Skywatch TV is beginning to resemble something new and a little bit different than what existed with my father. And the same thing is happening with Defender Publishing. I'm also the CEO of his publishing house, Defender Publishing. So a lot of moving parts, John, and we miss him terribly. And he has left a massive void, but we're grateful to be here and we're doing the best we can. And God is showing us ways to grow. I feel like, and this is not a reflection of my awesome performance, I just feel like God has been so good to over deliver in this really difficult test that we've been experiencing for the last few years. I can't believe I'm saying this. I literally can't believe I'm saying this. When my father passed away, there were some moments where we were kind of holding on to the side of the roller coaster, going over the turbulence. We weren't really sure what would become of Skywatch Television. There were some months that looked very much like we could be parting ways as a ministry. That God had done what he was going to do with Skywatch TV, and now that season, is kind of going the wayside. I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're actually hitting a curve where we've come through a lot of those battles and are now experiencing growth again.
Wow.
And
Nice.
it is 100% God. It can't be my business acumen or my sense of things. He's got control of all of this and he will own it to its outcome.
That's awesome to hear. And I can only imagine the kind of family trips or documentary trips that you guys might have had along the way. I can just think of a couple instances to where I would have loved to even have just been there. And I'm sure at your, during your time, I think you had disclosed to me before that, you were like, oh, I got to go here, but you got to go to see the Lucifer telescope
I did,
probably,
yeah.
and you
Mount
probably
Graham.
got to go to the Freemasonic headquarters there in Washington D.C. where he was going for that book for the book that he wrote about that. Did you get to go to do all that?
Apollyon Rising. I
You
got
got
to
it.
go on a lot of things. And,
Yeah.
to be around my father was to live a life of adventure. And I'll be really honest with you, a lot of it was really stressful, John. Trying to keep up with him. He was like a locomotive, and one idea was barely put to bed before a new idea. Like literally every day. Okay, now we're going to do this, and now we're going to do that, and then there's this thing coming in the fall, and his mind worked faster than most of us could physically keep up with, and we're trying to accommodate all of these big plans. I was able to see Mount Graham. I was there. I was the guy actually behind the camera. If you ever see any of that footage that went viral back in 2013, 2012, 2013, where he and Chris Putnam were walking around, at the large binocular that looks into the stars. I was there in the room when we were talking to some of the gentlemen in the tower that are explaining what we're seeing on the screens. The people that follow the stars that work for these large these. I'm being really careful. If you can't tell, I'm being really careful. But they're the ones that follow the stars, and they're the ones that disseminate information. And they were being very warm with my father, and so they entrusted us with certain revelation. But I will share this with your audience. We were watching the screen, and I saw what looked like a little orbit, zooming in between the stars, just like you see on the news all the time. And I asked one of the gentlemen monitoring the screens. I said, "Wait a minute, is that a UFO?" This was his response, John. He goes, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, aren't you gathering this video footage? Aren't you going to do something?" He goes, "We are literally bored with footage like that. It comes in all day long, 7 days a
Wow.
week. We're bored. Like it's not
Wow.
even worth talking about." Yawn, right? But no, I mean, so that was a lot of my life, man, was following the great Tom Horn, being on the road, getting to see. We went to outside of Area 51 in Roswell, and got to meet a lot of really interesting people. Um, what was his name? He's probably the most Travis Walton.
Hmm.
Got to meet Travis Walton one year at a behind the scenes, authors convention, and of course we met everybody in Bible prophecy, and just it's really hard to collapse, into a few minutes what being son of Tom was like.
Yeah,
Is a
I can only
great moral
imagine.
compass.
Very
He was an
cool.
intelligent teacher of the Bible. I never ever one time growing up went to my dad, John, with some deeply theological question about the afterlife where he was stumped. He could recite civilizations from 1,000 years ago. He could recite the life of Christ. He could work through what the Mayans were doing. He would talk about the varying calendars and what the Jews believe. Anyway, who gets? I mean, I'm probably just oozing with affection, but who gets to grow up with a father like Tom Horn and a mother like Nita Horn?
And it's really hard too because my father passed too, and when you want to call them and just kind of like, hey, what do you think about
Oh,
this that's going on? It would be so lovely to be able to do that, but they're just not there, and that's probably the hardest part for me, in missing my father. I'm sure for you as well.
I may get emotional saying this, but we are unscripted here. We're just being two brothers in the Lord talking at this point. One of the lessons I could have articulated theologically a few years ago, but didn't really, really, really resonate with until I lost my father was how much John, as a man and as a human, part of how I did life was running everything through the filter of my father. I mean, everything.
Mhm.
Literally every life decision. You do your thing, you pray, you talk to your wife, you get wise counsel. Somewhere in that process, you go then and you talk with your dad. Dad, what do you make? And you lay it all out. You put your court case before him, and then you wait for his take. And that's a huge part of what informs you about what you maybe would want to do moving forward. And I knew that when I lost him, I knew I was telling my friends when he was getting very ill, I said, if I lose him, I'm going to go through a period of time where I swear I don't know who I am. I mean, sure, soundbite on paper, I know who I am. I know what I believe. I know what I stand for. But I mean, who am I, the man, the father, the person without my dad? An enormous part of how I do life. And I could have said that, and I did say that, but man, nothing prepared me for the two simultaneous things that happened when he passed away. One, the emotional part of being the son. He was my hero, my moral compass, my hero. Losing all the emotional part, and literally within hours having to run to the cameras to explain to the world the loss of Tom Horn and trying. I mean, there was no breather. You are now immersed in everything that he was doing. You've taken over the publishing house. You're trying to oversee summer camps at Whispering Ponies Ranch. You're trying to be there for your mom. You're trying to be, the decider at all these ministries. And then you do the interpersonal part of grappling with, I don't feel adequate. And where's all this going? Here is what, to wrap this up, here is what I think has landed with me permanent. It was like the Lord one day in one of my desperate prayers, and I was saying, God, I'd give anything to run all of this past my dad just one more time. Just right track, wrong track. Dad, what do you make of all these things we're getting ready to do? We've made some very big decisions that could have been the end of some of this and or the greatest thing. I have jokingly said probably 50 times in the last 3 years, this is either going to be the greatest idea I've ever had, or it'll be the last idea that I've ever had. I would give anything, Lord, to just one more time. And I feel like he said, Joe, this is in my prayer time, Joe, you're going to have to learn to depend on me as your heavenly Father like you've never had to before. There is no more earthly fatherly sounding board. And now you're the one that everybody's counting on to get a lot of this right. Well, me getting things right is it's a doofus's endeavor. I'm a flawed human being with busted thoughts, and I've never considered myself to be my father, the guy that kind of just always seemed to know things. And so I have had to hit the altar harder than ever before, John, in this pursuit. God, don't let me louse this up. Don't let me fumble the football with this great opportunity to get things right. Let me be more in tune with your leading than ever before. And I would even go a step further, and then I'll stop talking about this point. I don't know with my earthly father here, John, if I would have ever had a season that required me to prioritize leaning on my heavenly father more than I do now. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that anytime we lack things here in the physical world, there's that ability for God to fill that gap here as well. And I think that that's definitely something that for me has been a major case as well. It's been something where I've had to realize that it's just me now. There's no dad to call, figure out what to do. It's
Yeah.
just me and God. And you've come to the same conclusion. And I can imagine the pressure that you have, because what you do at Skywatch, you guys run an operation there. This isn't just, a couple guys, talking about things and going on documentary trips. You have an entire staff and facility, and you have a lot going on there. So I know that the pressure's immense, and the fact that you continued on to do it, even though you really never had to. You really never had to do that. You could have just said, listen, I'm going to sell this. I'm done. I can't, I'm not going to fill my father's footsteps here. But instead, you've determined yourself to do it and to take on this pressure. And in the times that we're in right now, it says a lot about you, because we are experiencing some very dark times, I would say. I can feel that spiritually, but also there's a lot going on in a positive way as well spiritually. And so I figured we could probably transition
Yeah. Yeah.
into speaking a little bit more about that and the amount of stuff that we're dealing with, because it doesn't seem natural. It seems very supernatural.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So the darkness and the light are in my lifetime, and I'm not I would not say, I've lived into my 80s now and can look back in the rearview mirror and juxtapose this against many, many decades, but almost 50. We'll be 50 in a couple of years. And I remember telling my father in my early 30s, Dad, the battle between light and dark just seems to be amplified. And then we had some, blue leaning presidents or fully blue, team blue presidents. And I recall during those seasons, with the passage of what seemed like, um, with the passage of Obamacare, I'll just say it. It felt to me like now government is stepping in and telling me what I can do with my body. They're telling me what I'm going to put in my body. I could see the slippery slope of, and I remember spelling the apocalypse back in 2009, 10, where I thought the battle between light and dark, this is it. This is the end of days. They're now going to tell us what we can and can't do medically, which is then going to translate to what car we drive and what schools. Where I could just see this all. And of course, in my dad's wisdom, he would say, be patient, because a lot of times, and now you can see this playing out today, he would say a lot of times, right before light bursts through, it appears that darkness is beginning to prevail. And he said, with the passage of things like Obamacare and the bear being poked, and he said, too many people are still asleep, and it's going to take a lot more than this to get those with conservative values awake and to try to take back the country. But he said, be patient, because they're poking the bear. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of conservatives, there's a lot of Christians out there that they're afraid to speak up. And when culture gets to a place where they're no longer afraid to speak up, they're going to find out that they vastly outnumber these evil actors by hundreds to one. So he had this long, pragmatic view of things. So when you're talking about evil on the rise, you see recently with the shooting of Charlie Kirk, there is an argument that evil is on the rise. We're living in times where taking a position like the one I've done in my forthcoming book, where I'm standing against the adult entertainment industry, because I'm basically informing the listener how these industries fuel the demand for paid for encounters with children. And I'm being very sanitary here so that we don't throw the algorithms that'll get this video taken down. Yes, evil is rising, but you see this very obvious rise in a culture that is tired of this evil. They're tired of their children going to school and coming home confused about their gender orientation. They're tired of a culture that's creating cartoons and media that is there to inform the children that they don't have to be boy, girl, brother, sister, father, mother. They can explore whatever identity they feel based on feelings and titillation. And a lot of these poor kids don't have a clue when their hormones are forthcoming where these thoughts and feelings are coming from. And then they have adults there to help them safely navigate these things in the form of sex ed. You've got a culture that's tired of the teaching of critical race theory. They're being thrown out of school board meetings. They're getting sick and tired of a culture that's trying to normalize inappropriate relationships between adults and children. You've got a society that's tired of sharing restrooms. You've got a society that's literally sick of mass shootings. They're saying, why can the feds squander billions of dollars? I'm one of them. Why can the feds squander billions and billions of dollars but do nothing to offer some form of armed guard at my local tax paid for public school? Why do we not provide? This now is getting into a much grander conversation about the public school systems and armed guards and thoughts that I have on that. But the point is, you have a society that believes, John, that we don't have fellow Americans that disagree with us. We have oppressors and we are victims. When you start calling everybody that disagrees with you Hitler, and you say that they're a threat to democracy, you plant ideas into the heads of very vulnerable people that are not mentally well. You tell them things like, someone's going to have to deal with this uprising. Someone's going to have to squelch this. This threatens our very lives. Pretty soon we'll all be in jail cells. Then you play on, and they know what they're doing. You play on the fact that these people are not mentally well, and you've told them that their way of life is coming to an end. They will not have the freedom to express themselves. They will not have the freedom to choose the life that they want. We have to stop this. We are not fellow Americans with disagreements anymore. We are a side effect of a construct that these kids coming up now, this new generation that you see, a construct of brainwashing that says they are your oppressors, you are a victim. And the only way to preserve your way of life is to stop them. And then you dog whistle in language all around, straight up telling them you've got to kill this human. And then we wonder why you see people that are flooded with darkness, that have all kinds of emotional, spiritual problems, then want to take the life of someone like Charlie Kirk. So that's the evil side of what we see rising. And yes, you're seeing people calling for the release of the young man. I'm not even going to say his name. I'm not going to dignify him by saying his name. But assuming what we've learned about the shooter is true, assuming what we've learned through the media and through the Department of Justice and the FBI, assuming that that is all completely transparently authentic and true, that it is this young man that they've captured. I'm not going to say his name and edify him. I don't want to make a martyr out of him or make him a star. If it's truly what we've learned about the shooting, if it's true, then I'm not going to elevate him. On the other hand, you look at what has happened post the shooting of Charlie Kirk. And I'm not saying anything that your viewers haven't already gleaned. By the time they watch this episode, they'll have probably made their own determinations about how they feel about the aftermath. But what have we seen? We've seen Tucker Carlson, Marco Rubio, Erica Kirk, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, all of the primary leaders or the people that are out front leading the nation at the moment. You see all of them doing what? At his vigil, at his memorial, you see the preaching of the gospel in plain English for the layperson that's never heard it before. There's a spirit here that I want to learn more about. I saw a video, John, in making the argument for you here that there is a light that is also coming on very strongly now. I saw a video the other day of a young girl. She looked maybe 22. She's still dropping the F-bombs every third or fourth word. She's weeping. Her hair is combed over. It's bright purple. And the caption was that she was either a Democrat or a former Democrat. And she's crying and she's talking about the shooting of Charlie Kirk. She feels like the people that she used to identify with have crossed lines. There needs to be more sympathy for the family. This is monstrous. And she's using the F-bomb constantly, but she is saying it's time to get back to God. And for her, she doesn't even know what that means. She just feels it at a supernatural. You can feel the Holy Spirit is massaging hearts. He's moving people, man. He's mobilizing efforts. Turning point. And by the way, I don't equate necessarily conservative movements. I don't equate that math as a direct correlation of revival like some of my Christian constituents. But I will agree that the spirit behind a lot of that want to move towards conservative values stems out of a biblical worldview and a general admission that we are absolutely lost without a Messiah. We were created by a Messiah, by a creator, to be submissive to him, period. And that's why if you're watching the show and you're depressed, if you're angry, if you feel out of place, like you've said to yourself, I don't belong here, I'm out of sorts, this world wasn't meant for me, I wasn't built for this place, it's possible that you've never found out what it is that God put you here to do. It is likely that you have no concept that you were designed by a creator to be submissive to him. And until you find your calling, the reason that he put you here, you're going to be at odds with this place because, John, we are ambassadors to this world. We're not meant to necessarily be comfortable. Our priority isn't necessarily our temporal, fleeting joy over things we're going to watch on Netflix or things we're going to titillate ourselves with. We are put here and will always feel empty until we find the purpose, our calling. And that at the end of the day is to find our involvement in what preaching the gospel looks like. And what is that? In Matthew, what do we learn that the gospel is? It's the caring about the downtrodden. It's the feeding of those that don't have. I was sick and in prison and you visited me there. It's taking care of the orphans and the widows. So if we don't find our involvement in that movement, man, the revival movement, we're never going to be happy. And so I think that is kind of what you're seeing play out all across the nation right now. Mm-hmm. People are feeling these temporary, possibly temporary feelings of titillation and emotional distraught. What happens when people are uncomfortable is they start to seek to fill that hole. And it usually always gets packaged in some spiritual movement or momentum. Sometimes it's a time caps. It's a very short window, like following 9/11 when the nation came together and they all kind of admitted for a moment that maybe what we need is God. And then as we became comfortable again, you kind of saw a lot of those same people reversing their steps, walking away from it. And once again, everything went back to normal. This one feels a little different to me, John, and I don't know if you'll agree with this. This one feels a little more time tested and like it could last because it could be a broad moment where the nation realizes that we were way off track for way too long. They saw the damage of the side effect of what culture becomes without Christ, and they are ready now not to just pay lip service to the motion of the gospel, but to do, to get involved, to evangelize people in their circles. I don't know if you agree with that, but that to me is what I think this tug of war, if I were to try to and capture it into words, that's what I feel this tug of war is. It is the raising of darkness and darkness on the move. It's like Lucifer knows that his time is short and he's pulling out all of the stops. Meanwhile, you've got maybe a real remnant of Christ rising and saying enough. Do you agree with that, or do you feel like I'm just hyperventilating?
No, I agree. I totally agree with that because you see this hatred rising, but always, and I think you can probably make this argument, most people could, that when the hatred for Christianity, even the going as far as to assassinate or murder Christians takes place, that's when Christianity tends to shine the most. I know that in some of the different missions that I've been doing in Lebanon and with Muslims, you see this massive increase in Christianity within those worlds. Like they're just hungry and waiting for it. It's almost like the Bible says that the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. It's almost as if, like, putting it in farmer terms, like the Bible talks about, if you were to just go and take your hand and grab, there's so many that are there waiting for that to happen. And so you see that, but at the same time, there's more people killing those people than there were before. And so there's definitely that paradigm happening. And I think that Charlie Kirk, the whole thing, and then, of course, like you said, by the time people see what we're talking about here, this conversation's been had, but there was definitely a symbolism there with Charlie Kirk. I don't think planted necessarily on purpose, but just Charlie's name, his etymology of his name means free man, church.
Mm.
Kirk means church in the Scottish, and the fact that, he worked for a company called Turning Point, and we have literally seen a turning point. There's a lot going on there, and I would love to have, looked, have my dad see this or your dad see this and be able to be like, what do you think about this?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
my dad and me would have these conversations as well, before
Hmm.
he passed, about prophecy. And you look at this stuff, and it's just so mind blowing to me to see what is happening. But I do agree with you that even though that there's also really dangerous points on one end of the spectrum or the other, because when you get into Christian nationalism, you also get into kind of where the, possible, um, like the Crusades and things like that, to where people were put to death because they don't want to like this Pope. So you could get to those points to where that's kind of the danger in one end of it, but there also is something very positive coming forth from it. And of course, Christ will reap his seed, no matter how many Decepticons there are out there. Christ will
Decepticons.
Christ will reap his seed, I believe, and I think you're right.
Yeah, that's an old reference, by the way. If you know about the Decepticons, that's an old one. That
Oh
was our
yeah.
childhood, man. You've got to
Oh
be
yeah.
close to my age, but
Yeah, I think I am probably exactly right. I don't. I'm 43. I just turned 43.
okay. Okay, so you're there, man. G.I. Joe,
Yeah.
the Decepticons, you got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about, I think the reason why Charlie Kirk resonated so fast and so deeply, I saw so many posts, and I was one of them. I wept on a couple of occasions, just, lump in the throat, like just, and I've never met Charlie. I don't know his family. but I could appreciate his career. And I really, I mean, he was one of a kind. I could not do what Charlie did. I could not stand there with 10,000 young people or 5,000 young people and say, everybody that disagrees with me, come to the front of the line. And without notes, just kind of rap and pull data from, I mean, he was one of a kind. Um, but I think
31 too, 31 years
oh,
old. Man.
this is not a guy I don't believe. Again, I didn't know him personally, but this cannot have been a guy that grew up, eating cereal and playing video games and sitting around, wasting Saturdays. Like he was a read human. He was in books. He was reading the Bible. He was reading history books and studying cultures and memorizing data points having to do with the border and politics and policies and who said what and when they did it in Congress and just he was a very special guy. But I think the reason why you saw so many posts, people saying, "I can't explain why I'm in tears for a man I've never met." You learn of Hollywood people that pass away all the time, and for a lot of people, it's that momentary pause. They're like, "Oh, that's too bad." Well, anyway, what are you going to do? Back to whatever Netflix or what's for dinner. Like they just Charlie was like deeply impacting people by the millions. Why is that? And I think it's because people, even early, that couldn't articulate why they were so upset, what they would have said if they could have gotten their head caught up with the feelings they were experiencing is this: Charlie Kirk is you. Charlie Kirk is the next one. This doesn't stop with Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was a message. Charlie Kirk was an example of what happens when you stand for your belief. Yeah, you're living in the United States. This could happen to anyone at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Kirk was a believer. He was a Christian. This is what those that oppose you, not Charlie Kirk, think of you and what they would be willing to do if you become so persuasive that you start drawing attention. I think, and now, and I got to tell you, completely impressed. I'm not going to name names, but some of those that had stood up the very quickest, who I've had lots of disagreements with over time. Not that these people know me, but I'm just saying I hear their stated positions and I've taken issue with them. But I've been super impressed with this prevailing message. We will not be quiet. In fact, we're going to go out in public and do more events even harder because of what you tried to silence. And I'm like, okay, right now would be the time for that message to really show something about your seriousness.
Mm-hmm.
Not in 6 months from now, where they've improved security and they've come up with protocols and you've seen somebody else do a few rallies and they got away with it. Okay, maybe I can go out now and flex some fake bravery. No, right now, while we don't know what's going to happen next, and measures have not been maybe improved upon, but not perfected. And I've been super impressed with the reaction from a lot of the people in conservatism to stand up immediately and say no, and not just no because of political politics, but specifically standing in defense of the gospel message.
Mm-hmm.
John, that has blown my mind. I did not know that the country had that kind of courage in it. And maybe that makes me a pessimist. I really early on after those first few hours following Charlie Kirk, I thought, man, this could really do a lot of damage to the platforms willing to talk about the gospel.
Yeah.
And before I even said that out loud, I saw people rising. I thought, oh my goodness. So I don't know. These are just the interpersonal thoughts of Joe Horn without a script, man. I don't know if any of this is interesting to anybody, but
Well, we never do. We just throw them out there. It doesn't matter. We're having a conversation. That's what this is all about. And I enjoy having the conversations about stuff like this because ultimately in everyday life, the people you meet or the people I meet anyway in everyday life, they're not having these kind of conversations. You're lucky to get any kind of conversation about anything out there with a lot of the people that you meet, that I meet anyway. I keep saying you, but me, that I meet out there on a daily basis. I do get a chance to interact with people when I go to conferences and
right,
I have
right.
friends and stuff that I interact with that. But I'll tell you this. So on one end there is a almost revival going on because I believe that in persecution this is what exactly will happen. The more persecution, the more revival will take place. And at least that's what I've been hoping for. I hate to even say I'm hoping for persecution. I'm really not, but I'm hoping that the result is if the persecution is taking place, there is revival and not shrinking back and
Yeah.
going into the shadows. So,
Right now, if we were to look at the last, 14 days, if what has happened with Charlie Kirk is any kind of a litmus test at all to see what the nation's reaction would be, I'm a lot more confident right now that it would be the worst move of the enemy to try to remove any more messengers. I mean, you look at Charlie's voice right now is 50 billion times. I mean, you can't even quantify the growth at Turning Point alone. The number of people, like I said a minute ago, standing up and preaching the gospel, like not even offering political commentary.
mm,
Their condolences to the family is very short, and then they go right into the preaching of the gospel. Well, what is compelling that? And by the way, I'm not publicly endorsing all of the people behind that message. I've even had my own thoughts as a discerning human. I've even thought, would some of these people be hijacking this moment, stumping on the message of the gospel for their own political gains? That may seem really tinfoil hat. I don't want to make anybody out to seem disingenuous or to name anyone specific, but it has occurred to me that some of these people that have been in politics for decades and could have said something sooner are now being celebrated at these massive audiences where they're doing vigils for Charlie Kirk and they're preaching the gospel. But
I don't think
here's
that's
what,
tinfoil hat, though. I think that that is expected. I would say that if there's an enemy out there, he's going to do exactly that. I think it'd be kind of
yeah.
naive and almost tinfoil hattish to believe that it's not possible that that's the case. But anyways, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, isn't it wonderful, though, to be in an environment where people feel like their own survival has to at least mimic what they see the culture doing?
Hmm.
And if they're reading the culture, even if it's malevolent, excuse me, even if their intentions are malevolent, they're reading a culture that says, man, this culture's moving back toward Jesus.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to survive this place, I have to chameleon like I am identified as one of those aligning himself with Jesus.
Hmm.
So when you look at the culture, I love where the culture is going on that front. I'm just not dismissive of the fact that there might be malevolent actors trying to exploit the movement. And that's where I say God will sort all of this out, man. He's going to anoint those that he's called, and he's going to show those, I believe he's going to show those who are only wearing a costume to be exactly what they really are.
Yeah,
I just feel like he is sorting people out, man. You're seeing corruption exposed. Some cases not nearly fast enough. I still have lingering questions about why did the Epstein thing suddenly vanish from the news. I still have continued questions as a child advocate and somebody that wants justice for what all of that was about. So anyway, of course, now you're getting into the territory of my forthcoming book, Innocence Shattered.
yeah.
But
That book, people can get that on Amazon. Is that correct? You can get that on Amazon, your website. I'd like to read it. I have not read it yet, so I'm excited. I know you have a documentary too, in kind of in line with this as well, right?
yeah, it would take it'd take a couple of hours just to do the drive-by shooting version of what we did with the Rescue Us docuseries that you mentioned, and then of course the follow-up work that now resides in this book here, Innocence Shattered, which will be out in November. But I mentioned at the front end of the program that I'm a child advocate. And both the six-part series that you can watch at skywatchtv.com, you can stream it right now there. You can also go to Amazon Prime and stream it. But basically, what it is it's a clinic on full display the Luciferian war that is being waged on the minds of an entire generation of children. The very underlying root cause of how you would have young people now so deceived in Lucifer's lies that they would be capable of cheering on the death of somebody like Charlie Kirk. And this is, we put the series out last December. And I was talking literally 2, 3 years ago when they did the interview with me, I was literally talking about mass shootings. I was talking about the rise of evil. I was talking about critical race theory, the classroom. I was talking about all of this. The book also has, like the series, an appendix at the end that gives you a series of very thoughtful commentaries, kind of a self navigated, maybe along with the support of the Holy Spirit, a thought exercise that helps you come to your own God, what would I do were I to stand in the gap for some of these children? And it provides a lot of different alternative ways of examining that interpersonally. Lots of suggestions, lots of ideas, and basically says, John, whether you're a grandma on a pension who owns nothing and lives in an apartment, here is the thing that you can do right now, beginning today, to pray for these kids with intention. To the guy or the woman that has means or land or the ability to maybe build something similar like what we're doing at Whispering Ponies Ranch, a facility where children pulled out of this stuff come for rehabilitation and an encounter with Jesus Christ. So it's all of these layers where it explains the diabolical underbelly of this, and then a bunch of the solutions. And I'm telling you, man, it's a systemic court case on the church, their lack of involvement, and even their secret that they're hiding. The church has a dirty little secret, John, and that is that many of the pastors leading our nation right now are addicted to online malevolency in the form of adult entertainment. So you have pastors now pretending to be leaders of the flock, underwriting the very enterprise that is creating the paid for demand for children. Does that make sense?
It
Now,
does
whether
make
it's being
sense,
done
man.
in ignorance, there's an old saying, there's no obfuscation of the law just because of ignorance. If you're driving 50 miles an hour in a 20 mile an hour spot and the cop pulls you over, you're getting a ticket. And that's to super simplify and to really dilute the message in the book. But I believe God is going to hold his people in particularly accountable for their inaction. What does he say in Matthew? I was hungry and ye gave me not something to eat. He literally quantifies his calling, the gospel, in what we did or didn't do for the orphans and the widows. And so that's what the Rescue Us television series is, and that's what this is. And if people want to stand in the gap right now for a child, if that resonates with your viewers, the thing that they can help me do more than anything is go to Amazon.com right now and help me pre-order copies before November. Because the pre-orders help drive the algorithms that help me elevate this to a national conversation. So it is your field guide. It is a must read. So I love what's happening in culture on the front where you see people talk of revival. To me, you can't have true revival while there is an entire sea of children that are not being interceded for and are not being rescued. While the body of Christ entertains itself to death at fog machine riddled rock concerts, worship services. So if that sounds highly judgmental and angry, it's because I've spent a lot of time looking into this, John, and I'm telling you that we have a big problem in the church today, and I'm not seeing it addressed. And the only way to overcome darkness is to bring illumination, and that's what these works do. So,
Yeah. Even if they're doing it in ignorance, the Bible clearly says that my people were destroyed for lack of knowledge, and
that's right.
we should be aware of what we're doing, because a lot of people might say, well, this is, and honestly, I remember when I was a kid, it was very hard to get a hold of anything like that. You couldn't get a hold of,
Like
what we're talking about.
magazines
Yeah,
or,
you'd have to
yeah,
get a magazine or whatever, but now it's just so
it's everywhere.
easily available. But it's like, it is something that we really should guard our eyes from. I'm 100%. Any of that stuff is just wickedness upon our soul, and it creates insatiable, weird desires
That's
that
right.
people
That's
have, and
it.
you see it playing out all over
That's right.
society right now. So it's definitely a real issue, and I think most people have no idea what we're even talking about here, why it's such a real issue, and where it comes from, and what it enables. Most people, I just don't think
That's
they
right.
know that they willingly don't know it. One of the other things, but
No, you're absolutely right. As soon as you embrace your sin nature, as soon as you divorce yourself from God and you say, whatever my fantasies become, whatever I can daydream in order to satisfy my flesh, whatever I construct in my daydreams, whenever you say yes to all of that and you push out the conviction of the Holy Spirit and you walk away from God, or you do it via ignorance, like you said, there is no moment where you win the game. I am now satisfied. I have reached maximum joy. That is one of the biggest Luciferian lies attached to the adult entertainment industry. The adult entertainment industry not only deranges the human psyche, forces out God, leave Ephraim alone, he's joined his idols. You cut off the intervention of the Holy Spirit. You progress to where what excited temporarily last year is no longer titillating. There's a progression where evil power dynamics become the only way to be aroused or entertained. People become more and more unable to enjoy simply consensual lovemaking on video, and now they have to control someone else. It is literally the embodiment of spiritual persuasion. You're becoming completely taken over by demonic entities that have taken over your chemistry, they've taken over your thought processes. You've done this. By refusing to allow God's conviction, you've completely ejected him out of your heart, out of your life. You don't want it. You don't want to be guilty. And especially, by the way, I believe that if you're ignorant to this and you're out there in secular America and you had a troubled youth, and God is very patient with you because he understands that there needs to be grace with individuals that don't know any better. I've always believed that. When you know better and you stand up in front of the flock every Sunday, there's a different level of accountability. These are my beliefs. I believe God sees that as a complete and total fraudulent assault to that body that you're governing over. It's the middle finger to him for having given you the ability to reside over that group of people. And it is to push him out of not only your life, but to open portals in your home, your office, into your life. This is going to affect your children. This is going to affect your church. People that are coming there to be fed, that are looking for truth, won't even know why there's a cloud over that body of Christ. And I'm not saying God won't show up for those people that are seeking him legitimately, but can you imagine the kind of revival that could happen if the leaders, by the way, I've got so much research, man. I've got so much research on the number of pastors that are indulging in this, and like the 1% of them that agree that it's even wise to tell their congregation. I'm telling you, John, this is America's church, dark little secret. This is something that is so big and nobody is talking about it. I bring the receipts in Innocent Shattered, and I'm telling you, if you're out there and you're watching this, and if especially you're a person of the cloth that God has given a position of authority to, this is your warning. This is your warning. God is telling you right now, you better repent and you better turn your heart back to me because the days are short. And I think God is running completely out of patience. Does that make sense, John? Or is this just Joe Horn hyperventilating again?
It reminds me of Balaam, the whole Balaam Balak scenario, where eventually you hear the root of the story that Balaam, I believe if I got this correct, Balaam tells him to send in the prostitutes, send in, make them sexually immoral, make them have all these issues, and then God will curse them. You don't even really have to
Hmm.
curse them very much. They'll do it themselves. And this scenario, to me, reminds me of why we're seeing such a. I think the church is going very much downhill in a lot of ways because the lack of trust, the amount of people who have not exposed the traitor or not exposed the abuser in the church anyway. And when all the religions are called on the table, I think Christianity is going to be the first one to get the knife taken to it. And I hate to even say that, but there's too many denominations. There's 44 plus thousand denominations, and there's these problems that are real issues. And this one right here isn't just a small issue. This is major. This is the dark secret. And like you said, this is a very dark secret. This is what transforms God's patience into God cursing and his wrath on a nation. And I really wish that more people could see it. But as you know, this is one of these subjects that no one wants to hear about. Really, no one wants to talk about. And I've
That's
realized this
true.
throughout my time that
That's right.
it's just really hard to get people to want to hear what we're saying right now.
This is kind of the response we feel we get. La 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 la. I don't no no. That's not for me. Turn the channel quick. Delete. No 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 no. But we love that you're doing something about it. And we're willing to support you as a ministry because we do care. We just can't. And so I will tell you, when I did my health reveal in 2018 and I put out my book Time Bomb, John, it went viral as could be. I was traveling, I was flying all over the nations. I couldn't believe what God did with my book Time Bomb. It was absolutely incredible. Because I had put out one book in 2015 right before that on the pet industry and dog food, and I was a dog trainer years ago, and you know, but when I put out Time Bomb with a message of you can reverse autoimmunity, and I started talking about people that I knew that were using the tips and tricks from that book to reverse all kinds of malevolent things. That book went so ridiculously viral. When I put out Rescue Us, brother, it was like a totally different reception, John. That series broke 2 records at Skywatch TV. Came out last December. You want me to reveal what those 2 records were?
Let's hear it.
The first record was, it was the least number of units ever participated in ever for a fourth quarter ministerial push, ever.
Wow. Wow.
Ever. And by a landslide. And I was brokenhearted because I thought people, maybe they just don't care.
Yeah.
We had been in production for 3 years. The second thing, and then I'm going to shut up because I don't know if we're out of time here. The second record that it broke was it incentivized the people that watch Skywatch TV to call in and support that ministry like they had never done before. I'm talking about donations, prayers, emails. Now, how in the world do you square that other than to describe it like I did a minute ago? It's kind of like we don't want to see it. We don't want to drive by and look at the car accident, but we'll send flowers to the family. Like it. I feel like, John, there needs to be people out there that are willing to say, God, this is going to be the hardest thing I've ever observed. But think about this, John. Think about the suffering of the children, what their inescapable reality is.
Yeah.
Think about that for just a minute. And if we don't do something, who's going to do it? It isn't going to be the government. They're trying. I believe this administration's done a lot. Tom Holman at the border, he's a rock star. He's done a great job. But you're talking about trying to manage this giant serpent. I want to cut the head off the serpent.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be there to rescue. I want to be there for rehabilitation. But I want that to become not a need anymore because we've guillotined where the root causes exist. But at the very least, the leaders of our church getting right with God, rededicating their lives, and leaving the filth behind.
Thank you so much, Joe, for coming on to this broadcast, and let people know where is the best place for them to go and see your content or maybe get a hold of you, whatever you prefer. And I'll put the link in the description.
They can find everything they need to at www.skywatchtv.com.
You guys heard it there, skywatchtv.com. Thank you all so much for listening. Please hit the subscribe, pound that like button, and thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next time, and be blessed.
The world keeps lying, but he won't retreat on his quest for truth. Yeah. Truth, quest for truth. They can't stop me, they can't block me. Moving through, got that